those respective areas need to have the same non-development agreement, because that's something that's going to govern if we do go up to 45 years. It's going to have to be a document that long after I'm gone and long after Mrs. Turner's gone and the council's changed over, that somebody can look back on and there not be a bunch of, okay, this parcel of land is for 17 years and has this, and this parcel of land is for 45 years and has this. They should be uniform agreements for the different areas.
But is that a statutory requirement?
No, it's not, it just says that each landowner must be offered a non-annexation development agreement, not that each landowner has to be offered the same.
So it don't have to be, is that correct?
It doesn't have to be,
But for
but,
convenience, you would like it that way?
right, the recommendation of, at least legal to the council when considering these, is that the 3 in the north be uniform and the 2 in the south be uniform.
But that is not statutory, correct?
Correct.
And you did say that if you did break off a portion and develop it, that's the only portion that would go out of it. The rest of it would stay in the, rest of the acreage would stay under this agreement.
And Mrs. Tipton asked if you develop part of it, does it stay? The answer to that, actually looking in here, and that's under that same 43.035 section, is no. Once the non-development agreement is breached at all, it destroys the agreement for all of the property,
Okay.
and then the city has the ability to annex.
Because the agreement is based on the property itself. correct?
The total
Yes,
property.
and it essentially becomes a breach of contract on that piece of property. As well.
That really, the contract that you sent out, you had a severability clause in it, and it, you know what it says? So only if one article, or one of the article that addresses dividing, if that were violated or just developed, if I wanted to develop 10 acres but not the rest, well, the rest of the agreement would still survive.
The severability clause goes towards if, for some reason, a court finds one section unenforceable, the rest of the agreement remains enforceable. As far as subdividing the land and things like that, it applies to the entire acreage. The severability clause isn't to divide up the acreage. It's only for sections of the contract itself, should one be deemed illegal.
Chris, say a landowner has 100 acres, could that landowner have 2 non-annexation development agreements? One for 20 acres that he may or may not develop in the future, and one for the remaining acres that are in the flood zone and they're going to commit to having as agricultural for the next 100 years?
If it's currently subdivided already in that manner, then yes. But if it's one solid tract right now, then the non-development agreement only applies to the tract itself.
But in the same manner that they would be dividing for family members, and it's the same owner sort of situation in dividing and saying, okay, we're going to take these 20 acres and commercially develop it, but remain these 80 acres as agricultural, I would see that as kind of falling under that piece.
Well, the statute says that when you submit a subdivision plat or a development document, it destroys the development agreement. So that means even if you submit a subdivision plat that only shows 20 acres of it going to be developed, it destroys the NDA completely.
And then ultimately it comes back to the city council to say, do we want to annex it?
Correct.
And the city council could then say, we want to annex just the 20 acres that you've developed and leave the remaining that you are not developing as agriculture.
That is always at the discretion of the council. Yes,
Chris,
Mr.
another question you just brought up. I run a business out of my home also. I'm employed full-time, I have a part-time business. Would that be deemed commercial? That would...
Not currently, because the way it's set up right now and the offer that we're giving you right now, as long as the character stays the way it is, you're fine. Now, should you expand and then decide that you don't want that to be part of the rest of the agricultural area, and you want to carve out a section that's just for the business and subdivide it,
Okay.
then yes, it would be subject. But right now, the character and the nature of the land as it is, as long as it stays that way, then you're fine.
Okay.
I'm Tom Boynton. I'm not actually involved in anything yet. We're too far out. But I did have a question about if the city at some point annexed some of the areas that are being talked about that are already receiving water from someplace like SS Water. I'm on the SS Water Board. I'm, based on the discussion you and I had before, the SS Water would still continue to supply that water. But my question is, would that annexed property then be able to receive wastewater,
Service from the city.
services?
And full disclosure before I answer, we are also the attorneys for SS, Lou Rosenberg.
Okay.
But the answer to that impartial is yes, they could still receive wastewater services from the city of Floresville. SS obviously has its CCN, and that protects it. What would happen then, usually is Floresville and SS would work out an agreement where it says that every month billing statements, because wastewater is often goes off of water use, then we would work out an agreement where you send us the invoices for those people to show how much water they used, and we can therefore bill sewer based off of that.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
But it's still at the discretion of council to either provide sewer or allow them to continue a septic, correct?
The city ordinance on that says if it's cost prohibitive to provide sewer, then those individuals can use septic out where they're at. I believe that's Mesquite Branch was approved to use septic out in that manner. But it is still up for the city manager to review the cost to extend it out there, and then for city council to review those costs to look at that option.
Now, can the customer demand those services if he doesn't want to continue doing a septic tank?
They can, they're gonna have to pay for it. So, they can demand it, but since we do have an option, there are places in the city that already use septic because of the cost, the service plan has to be at an equivalent level of a similar place development. And so since we already have established that some places are required to use septic because the cost is too great to get there, those individuals may be required to use septic as well.
And they wouldn't have an option about that.
Right, and well, they have the
That would be
option.
the
that-
city's option, not the user's option.
Correct, and if they would like to, they're always welcome to approach the city and see if they can work out a way to get the line down there. Usually some sort of reimbursement or cost sharing program is available. But yes, that's the way it's set up right now.
Now, is that in the city's ordinance, or is that a state rule?
That's the city's ordinance on provision of water and sewer. The state rule is that in a service plan, the city has to provide services at an equivalent level to an area of similar nature.
And this
Within
is-
a time period?
That's my next question, is to specify is, from the point of annexation, how long does the city have to provide those equivalent services? Or do they have to provide those services at the time of annexation?
No, you have up until, I believe the maximum with every extension and everything is 4.5 years. Generally, I believe it's 2.5 years. And at the end of that term, if the services aren't implemented in accordance with the service plan, then the area is automatically disannexed.
Chris, what about the area that's already got sewer, water, and garbage from the city, but still in the county? When do they plan on looking at annexing that area?
That'll be part of the 3-year plan, so I believe those are commercial or residential areas, and they don't have the ag exemptions on there, so they're not part of. The city's been looking at a 3-phase plan. One is these development agreements, the second is voluntary annexations, and the third is the 3-year plan. So we're obviously working on the first one now. When the first one's through, we can then do the voluntary annexations of Richardson's, the CVS, the park, and the Civic Center, or the Event Center. as, because then they'll be contiguous to the city, and then we can move on to the third plan, the third phase, which is the 3-year plan to get those places in.
How hard is it to divide your place? Could that be done between now and September the 3rd? So you can have your 2 plats?
That I can't answer you with a yes or no. I can tell you.
And what are the steps to divide that, to do that?
That would be, well, you're obviously located in the county right now.
That's right.
That's why we're here. And so since you're located in the ETJ within the county, to subdivide it and move everything forward, then you'll approach the county with getting it replatted. The city will have to sign off under the way it is currently and then get it through. So I can't tell you no, but the odds of getting that process through everybody prior to September 3rd are probably not the best.
I think we have everybody in the room that would be involved in that. And I think that they recognize the needs of these families who want to continue their property. I think if that's something that the property owners chose to do, I think it could be expedited.
That's not my call. Obviously, I'm not one of the elected officials that's charged with that. You do have to look into then rollback taxes and things like that as it gets subdivided.
Well, I mean, I would still want the property to be ag, and we don't have any plans at time, but at any time in the foreseeable future. But that is, once again, we're talking about tying the hands of future generations.
And that's something where I would advise you to consult your legal counsel or your, somebody that's familiar with the land rules there and help you get that moving as fast as possible.
Anybody else have a question? Comment? Thank you. Oh, sorry.
My name is Steve Smith. I'm from 181 property. First of all, Mr. Hugg, who wrote this contract? You or Mr. Rosenberg?
So I wrote the non-development agreement. You know, we sent it.
Now, I think everybody in this room understands that right now, the agreement that we have before us is an agreement that is written by the attorney who represents the city of Floresville. In the research that I've already done, we have to realize that he is not going to do anything or write this contract in which it benefits us, the landowners, greater than it does the city of Floresville. There's a number of clauses in there that I think either need to be rewritten or totally eliminated. The second point about this is Mr. Holcomb has a very specific problem for himself that none of the rest of us have. I mean, I've only got 24 acres in this deal. I don't have much to lose one way or the other, I guess. But I can tell you this, I want to make sure that Mr. Holcomb and his problem is taken care of to his satisfaction. And if it's not to his satisfaction, I don't intend to sign my agreement. I don't know what everybody else is thinking about doing, but we're trying to do what we can to help the city of Floresville. That's fine. I want to do that. We all want to be good citizens. But we want to make sure that what we're getting is an agreement that totally solidifies the fact that we're going to be non-annexed and we're going to have a longer period of, I want a longer period of time to protect us, but we need to make sure that the wording in that contract is at least equal for the landowners as it is for the city. I want to make sure that agreement is ironclad before any of us sign it. Okay. Now, in order to accomplish that, we have a date line, which is September the 3rd. And it is my humble opinion, as long as I've lived here in the city of Floresville, it takes a long time to get anything done. So we need to get that new agreement rewritten as soon as possible. Mr. Hogue, you need to get as quickly as possible and take care of Mr. Holcomb's problem to make sure that he's satisfied and that everybody else is satisfied before we sign that agreement. I don't think anybody has a problem with signing that agreement as long as it protects the five of us and assures us that you and the city can't, somewhere along the line, change something. And there's a couple of things in there that I think are somewhat ambiguous, so I think they need to be rewritten. So we need to get on the stick ASAP, get this done, get this corrected way before this September the 3rd.
And I'll be happy to meet with y'all next week, if everybody goes home, kind of looks at it, sees what changes they'd like, and I'll be happy to meet with everybody and get that moving and see what we can present to council. Like we said, at the 27th meeting, I believe we'll present what everybody's kind of discussed. Myself, Ms. Turner, we can get together and go over everything.
Okay, well, today is the 6th, is that correct?
Correct.
And the day this contract, we're gonna have to sign this contract is September the 3rd.
Correct.
Now, we have a city council meeting, and the city council is gonna have to approve the negotiations that we came up with,
Correct.
right? And what date is that?
The 27th is the council meeting.
The
But that's
27th.
not when the agreements are up for
Well,
consideration.
I came to the council, what's the first meeting after the 3rd of September? 10th?
So September 10th would be 1 week after that date, would be when they're up for approval at city council. So we need to make sure that they're in and at some point where we can present them to city council.
So you're telling me now that we're going to try to come to an agreement that's satisfactory to the five landowners and their attorneys in negotiating with you, and then we're gonna sign those agreements, but we're still gonna have to wait until the 10th of September to get that agreement approved by the city of Floresville.
Correct. If we reach an agreement where you're happy with, or okay with where those agreements are, to the point where you're comfortable signing it, then we'll present them to city council, and you can show up on that date, and everybody can sign them if council passes them on that date.
Okay,
That won't be possible for me. All of mine cannot sign on that date.
Well, and that's why we want to have it by the 3rd, so that way, if we reach an agreement after our meetings that you're comfortable with, then everybody on your side can sign, and it can be presented to council on that date, exactly as you've signed.
I'll just throw off the annexation calendar.
I think that's what's part of the annexation calendar. The 10th is the date that's for approval and annexation.
So we don't need to meet or come up with something by this next council meeting, by next week, to have it, or to make sure that we don't have to have another council meeting in between, a special meeting or anything?
Well, that's why we want to have the meeting on the 27th,
So,
have the item on there, so we can hopefully have it there. If the terms are approved at the 27th, then the meeting on the 10th will just be ratification of what was agreed to at the meeting of the 27th, and we're done. If the terms aren't agreed to by the 27th, then the meeting of the 10th would be whatever is changed between there for approval. So we have two shots essentially at it to keep on the timeline.
I have a curiosity question.
Yes, sir.
What if none of the five landowners signed this thing by the 3rd?
Then they're annexed. Then they're annexed. It's an involuntary annexation at that point.
But that would be under the same procedure that you would go to annex any of the other properties.
No, this is a C1 exempt because there's not 100 residential properties on those. So it's an exempt annexation under the C1 annexation plan.
So then the city would immediately set forth in providing sewer and water and all the other?
No, I believe water for your area is already Oak Hills.
Yes.
And sewer would probably not, it would probably be septic, just like the other areas in town.
It already is
that are
septic.
So it would stay there. You would receive fire, police, EMS, which I believe fire and EMS are already,
Yeah, that's
Wilson
that's
County
already covered.
We need a fire plug.
Animal control?
trash would be extended out there.
We need a
Animal
fire
control?
plug.
Yeah.
Would they put in fire plugs? We pay
I-
extra insurance because we don't have a fire plug.
I don't
within
believe so
1,000 feet of our
because
houses.
Oak Hills is the water supply over there, so it'd be up to Oak Hills to put in a fire plug.
So what city services would we get?
Trash,
No,
police.
we already got trash,
so-
same as we've already got septic.
Yeah, so you would essentially then be brought in, pay ad valorem taxes, be subject to zoning rules, everything like that.
And get nothing in return.
Because the city's already providing, well, the city's not providing police out there, it's still Wilson County, so police would be provided. Are you on Republic for trash? Or are you on Tiger?
No Tiger.
You'd be switched over to Republic because you'd be inside the city limits.
Do you have a choice on that?
No, if you don't sign the agreement, the annexation proceeds.
Chris, if they
No, I meant-
come back with a proposal, a counter proposal to you, saying, we're for this, as Mr. Smith has said, here's our counter proposal, and the city council does not approve that, and says, we want to stay with our original plan, does that same automatic annexation apply?
Yes, if an agreement is not entered into between the parties. It doesn't say who's responsible for not entering into it. It's just if an agreement isn't entered into.
Okay, then, we need a date next week to meet with you.
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I'm wide open.
What time?
What time's best for y'all?
What's a good time for everybody?
Preferably after 10, so I can get down here, but anytime after that's great.
Mr. Tibbetts? What's a good time for you?
Evenings are better than mornings. Probably around 6 o'clock in the evening would be good, and later in the week would be, because frankly,
That agree with you?
So we got the council meeting Thursday night, so obviously if we're doing it after hours, that's out. So we do Wednesday at 6?
That's a
Mr.
church,
Tipton, is
that's
that our
that's
agreement with
church
you?
day. Don't do it on church day.
Do what?
You're not gonna do it on, you go to church on Wednesdays.
What do we got? Oh, because there's the.
What days did you give me?
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but it looks like we've got conflicts with the CBA negotiations and stuff. Friday is probably the best
has to
one.
be also in the meetings, correct?
Yes,
She has to be in the meetings, so she's got.
we're looking at probably Friday.
Friday?
Friday.
No.
Friday?
Yes.
Yes.
Friday?
Friday?
What about Wednesday at
we
4?
got Friday.
Wednesday
Miss
at 4
Tipton?
works for
That's
me.
fine
I
with me.
don't know if that works
No,
for.
because you have CBA on Wednesday.
Friday at 6.
Wednesday at 4?
Wednesday at 4?
Wednesday at 4?
Wednesday at 4, anybody have an objection to that?
Did I make sure I go over right, Chris?
Yeah.
I prefer Friday at 6.
I think
He
he said
prefer
Wednesday
Friday
at
at
6.
6.
Okay, Friday at 6. Our son can't be back in St.
Friday at 6?
Friday at 6?
Okay. Devin?
Yep.
That's right.
Whatever we have to do.
Friday at 6?
Friday at 6 p.m.
Yeah, and we'll just meet here.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming, really appreciate it.
Yeah. Is that that leave us enough time?
If my pastors come back, and our pastor said, if I come next Wednesday night, they're gonna all lay hands and pray over me, and I think that's a good idea. And I